Before the British Empire painted the world red, England couldn't even rule itself. This land was not one kingdom, but many, and they were constantly at war. The story of England doesn't begin with global power. It begins in chaos. Long before sprawling colonies and naval dominance, this was a fractured, vulnerable island. To truly understand the rise of the British Empire, you have to go back to its violent, divided medieval origins. Welcome to the Forgotten England, a time before unity, before power, before empire. This was the era of the Heptarchy, a land split into 7 major Anglo-Saxon kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Sussex, and Wessex. Each had its own king, its own laws, and its own ambitions. The idea of a single England was a distant dream, a concept that had to be forged in blood and fire. For centuries, these kingdoms clashed, vying for dominance in a relentless cycle of rivalry and warfare. Alliances were temporary, betrayals were common, and peace was a fragile, fleeting thing. This wasn't a nation, it was a patchwork of competing territories, each fighting for survival and supremacy. The world they lived in was brutal and uncertain. Imagine a map of Britain, not as a single entity, but as a colorful, chaotic quilt of warring states. In the north, the powerful kingdom of Northumbria was a center of learning and culture, yet it was also racked by internal strife and vulnerable to attack. In the Midlands, the mighty kingdom of Mercia, under ambitious kings like Pendi and Atha, expanded its influence, building massive earthworks like Offa's Dyke to mark its borders and project its power. To the south, Wessex was slowly gathering its strength, laying the foundations for what would eventually become the heart of a unified England. These weren't just abstract political entities. They were distinct societies with their own dialects, customs, and identities. A farmer in Kent would have felt little in common with a warrior from Northumbria. Their loyalties were local, tied to their lord and their kingdom, not to a nation that didn't exist yet. This period of division lasted for hundreds of years, a constant struggle that shaped the very character of the land and its people. Then came the Vikings. As if the internal conflicts weren't enough, the late 8th century brought a new, terrifying threat from across the sea. The first raids, like the infamous attack on the monastery at Lindisfarne in 793, were just the beginning. Soon, these Norsemen weren't just raiding for treasure. They were coming to conquer and settle. The great heathen army arrived in the 860s, a massive force that swept across the land, toppling kingdoms one by one. Northumbria fell. East Anglia was conquered, its king, Edmund, martyred. Mercia was partitioned. By the late 9th century, only one Anglo-Saxon kingdom remained standing: Wessex, led by a king who would become a legend, Alfred the Great. This was England's darkest hour. The dream of a unified Christian England seemed to be dying, replaced by the prospect of a land ruled by Norse pagans, the Danelaw. But it's often in the face of annihilation that true strength is forged. Alfred of Wessex refused to surrender. From the marshlands of Somerset, he waged a guerrilla war, rallying his people and fighting back against the invaders. His legendary victory at the Battle of Edington in 878 was a crucial turning point. It didn't expel the Vikings, but it halted their advance and secured the survival of Wessex. More importantly, it laid the groundwork for the future. Alfred wasn't just a warrior. He was a visionary. He reformed his army, built a network of fortified towns called burhs, established a navy, and promoted learning and the English language. He began to see himself not just as the King of Wessex, but as a protector of all English Christians against a common enemy. The idea of England was beginning to take shape. After Alfred, his successors continued the fight. His son, Edward the Elder, and his formidable daughter, Tethelfold, the Lady of the Mercians, worked in tandem to push back the frontiers of the Danelaw. They recaptured towns, rebuilt monasteries, and extended their rule. It was a slow, grueling process of reconquest that spanned decades. Finally, in 927, Alfred's grandson, Atha, marched north and captured the Viking stronghold of York. He then secured the submission of the other rulers in Britain, including the kings of the Scots and the Welsh. For the first time, one man could claim to be king of all the English people. Athelstan was crowned Rex Anglorum, king of the English. The Kingdom of England was born, but unity was not a final destination. It was a constant struggle. The new kingdom remained fragile. Viking threats continued, and internal divisions lingered. The North, with its strong Scandinavian heritage, often resisted the rule of the southern kings from Wessex. Kings like Edgar the Peaceful managed to hold the realm together through diplomacy and a show of strength, but the delicate balance could easily be shattered. By the end of the 10th century, a new wave of Danish invasions, under leaders like Sweyn Forkbeard and his son Canute the Great, once again plunged the kingdom into crisis. In 1016, Canute conquered England, creating a vast North Sea empire that also included Denmark and Norway. It seemed as though the Anglo-Saxon dynasty had been extinguished. Yet, the idea of England persisted. Canute, a savvy ruler, governed England not as a conquered province, but as his prized kingdom, respecting its laws and customs. English identity was now strong enough to endure, even under a foreign king. After the Danish line died out, the old Wessex dynasty was briefly restored with Edward the Confessor, but his death in 1066 without a clear heir set the stage for the most famous event in English history. 3 claimants vied for the throne, leading to 2 invasions and 3 major battles in a single year. The English king, Harold Godwinson, defeated a Norwegian invasion in the north, only to be defeated and killed himself by William, Duke of Normandy, at the Battle of Hastings in the south. The Norman conquest of 1066 was a brutal and transformative event. It replaced the entire English ruling class with a French-speaking aristocracy and dramatically reshaped the country's culture, language, and government. But it did not destroy England. Instead, it solidified its borders and centralized its power more ruthlessly than ever before. The Normans and their successors, the Plantagenets, were powerful, often tyrannical kings who imposed a new feudal order and strengthened the institutions of the state. It was under their rule that a unique fusion of Anglo-Saxon and Norman French culture occurred, creating the distinctive English identity we know today. The very chaos and division of the preceding centuries had created a people resilient enough to absorb conquerors and a kingdom with a powerful sense of self. So, how did this divided, war-torn land eventually give rise to the world's largest empire? The answer lies in this tumultuous early history. The constant threat of invasion, from both Vikings and internal rivals, forced the development of military and naval power. The long, hard-won struggle for unity forged a strong, centralized state and a potent national identity. The lessons learned in surviving centuries of weakness and division were the very foundation upon which future strength was built. England's imperial ambition wasn't a sudden development. It was the ultimate expression of a national character shaped by centuries of medieval struggle. From the chaos of the 7 kingdoms, the terror of the Viking invasions, and the fire of the Norman conquest, a single, powerful nation was forged, a nation that would one day project its power across the globe. The British Empire did not appear from nowhere. It rose from the ashes of a forgotten, divided England. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into England's chaotic beginnings interesting, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical origin stories you'd like to see explored. See you next time.